At most sales kickoffs, the expo area is fine. A few booths, some branded swag, maybe a coffee bar. But is it actually delivering return on investment for your sponsors and for your sellers who are attending? So let's talk about this. There's 5 critical questions that every sales kickoff planner should be asking when designing the sponsor expo area, because this space has massive untapped potential, which I have personally seen over a few years. So welcome to another episode of Good Morning Enablement. I am joined by my colleague and co-founder, Matt Santa Cruz, owner of MSC Creatives, excuse me. Matt has spent the last 20 years ideating, designing, and being part of really large corporate sales kickoffs. And most recently, he worked with me and a team of people to design and architect one of our customers' expo spaces for partners. So let's get into this and welcome Matt. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so very much for joining us so we can tap your expertise.
Hi, Maria. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So let's start on the value part of a sponsor area at a sales kickoff. So how can we design an expo space that adds real value, not just for the sponsors who are paying to be there, but also for our sales team? How can we add value there?
When you're doing an expo, whether you have to or you want to, there are some key things that need to be addressed. What are the sponsors getting out of it? They're spending money on their booths, and they're spending money on their swag. They're spending money on people to travel to that location. They're spending hours in the booth. What are their sponsors? What are their goals? And what are the attendees getting out of it too? Why would an attendee want to go into the sponsor area? Why would they want to speak with particular booths and network? Why bother at all with an expo? If you don't have to, there's a lot of logistics around it, leading up to it and during. It needs a lot of attention for an event. So at the baseline, we need to make sure that all of the attendees are involved and all of the sponsors are getting what's anticipated and what's expected from their spend so they get a return on their investment.
Perfect. So I should imagine, I think what I heard you say is that as a sponsor, you need to make sure that there's traffic coming to them, or where's the value to them, right? So making sure it's set up for success so that, the sellers are going to that space during the event. That's part of the value. Interacting with the sellers, I think, so the sellers can use that partner or that business associates details as they're talking to customers. Brilliant. Okay. Now let's go to another question. A lot of sponsors, they're there, they're encouraged to bring freebies, a tchotchke, whatever you want to call it, maybe a t-shirt, maybe a key ring, whatever. But let's just go beyond swag for a minute. So when we have the sponsors in there, do you think they're walking away with leads and insights? Or do you think, they feel like they're just there handing out swag? From a brand perspective, Matt, that's what I'm leaning into because that's your expertise. Are the sponsors walking away with leads and insights or just handing out swag needlessly?
Yes, well, sponsors, large and small, those with brand awareness and those without, need to have some sort of a visual representation of their business. So they do purchase swag at varying levels, a keychain up to a coffee cup, t-shirts, polo shirts, to expand their brand and give visibility to those attendees on what they are, what they do, what they're about, and to get that takeaway. So when the attendee goes home, they remember that particular company and maybe call upon them if there was a good experience with their booth representatives when they're on site. But as a sponsor, needing to have that interaction with the attendee, needing to network, that's key. You're not going to get any sales leads. You're not going to expand your brand, your visibility to those people you want to get to network with, to have business relationships with. So there needs to be swag for sure. At some level, sticker, maybe just a smile. But yeah, it does need to. You need to show your brand out there on the sponsor expo floor.
Excellent. And, just to double click down on that, part of showing their brand has to be, and I've seen you help us set these up in the past, they have to have some kind of interactive demo, reason for the seller to talk to them, or they have to maybe do some real-time challenges or surveys or talk about customers together. That's a great opportunity. So I like that, Matt. Make sure that they're not just there with a white table with nothing on it and have nothing to say. From the planner's perspective, they're helping to equip them get insights by giving them the rules of what to do. Perfect. Thank you so very much. Now, this is all your expertise. You're one of the most, creative people I have ever worked with, and probably known from a corporate, creating these experiences perspective. I believe you're second to none, and hence the reason why we've worked together for many, many years. So, when you think about what drives people to, a theme park, a bar, a restaurant, wanting to go somewhere is very different from being forced to go there. So let's just double click on, how do we make the expo a destination rather than, oh, I'll just go there and grab some swag if I want it and then leave, which is normally typical for a lot of sales kickoffs who have expos. The people are just going in there for, like, I don't know, let me go get some free swag, or perhaps I want to take a booklet or whatever. Well, how do we transform that? How do we make that into an area and a space that they really want to spend time in?
That's a great question. Layout is key. I often think about it. You had mentioned a theme park, but I also think of it as a mall. Remember those?
Yeah.
However many of those are still around. I remember going to the mall as a kid, and there were these big department stores, maybe Macy's, and then smaller stores in between. So if you turn that into a expo floor plan, you want to have a big, beautiful, large company that has this big, beautiful booth that will bring those people in that you're almost certain that they do business with that particular company in a certain way. And all along the way are these smaller companies that are up and coming. Maybe they're startups, the smaller stores that need attention too. The worst thing for a first year sponsor is to be stuck in a corner where there's nothing else to gather the attendees. There's no mini booth with some content. There's no music. There's no food. Food's a big deal. Drinks are a big deal. So all of that needs to be placed with a lot of thought behind it, and timing as well. So maybe there is an activation for lunch where there is a particular speaker that's going to be on a little stage in the sponsor area that people are going to go, and you're going to receive that foot traffic all throughout. So as the layout goes into design, all of those things need to be taken into consideration.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, as you're speaking, of course, I'm a human, so I'm reflecting on my own experiences as a delegate versus someone creating it with you. And one of the experiences that you called to mind based on what you said was I went to this large conference who I won't name because I go there every year, and they oversubscribe their sponsor area. So I remember going into this expo hall, and there had to be about 250, sponsorship people in there, which is great for them. And I'm glad they're monetizing their event, and the event's not free. So you got paying people there. But what I found so disappointing was the food hall was there, but it was so complicated to try and hit up the booths that you wanted to genuinely go and see. There was so much, like 250, but so you're walking, you couldn't find the booth that you wanted. There was so much going on that you get a bit overwhelmed with it in a way that says, yeah, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go sit down, pinpoint the booth, go to the booth. And by the time you do that, the time that you had to spend there is gone. So one of the things, I like that you were saying was about the layout is important. Right, your layout so that you have some of the big, cornerstone people, the big people out there, like you referred to them as Macy's, etc. The big ones there who are probably paying for some kind of activation on their stand, like a popcorn machine or whatever. and then put some of the smaller ones in between, because people then can have more time to explore those ones who can't afford a giant booth as well. So you're adding value to the smaller and the larger. And I like the, you mentioned about activation. So yeah, I think that's important to have food and drink in there, even if it's like, snacks that like even fruit and chips and whatever, just giving it out for free in there to encourage them to, oh, I'm hungry, I'm gonna go get something, or drinks, like a coffee station. I think that's important. And I really agree with you, Matt, about the atmosphere being created with some music. I'm not saying, pump through there some techno or electric dance hall music, but having some kind of energy in there with a speaker and the music, I think can really transform the experience for the delegate. So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. My other question for you is aligning with the sales kickoff theme. This is an interesting one because a lot of the sponsors, of course, want to just be part of their own things. So can we align our sponsor content with the scope, with the sales kickoff themes, to reinforce any learning and motivation that that companies have invested a lot of money and time on? And if so, how could we do that?
This one's a little bit tricky because each event has a different theme, but the smarter sponsors will do their best to align to that theme. A lot of times there are co-branded tchotchkes that are given away. And with that messaging that comes from the overall event messaging, if the sponsor can incorporate that into their giveaways, their data sheets, their one sheets, their demos, if they could do that, it's a little more memorable subconsciously for the attendee to see that alignment with whomever is doing the event and whomever is sponsoring the event. It's almost like if someone knows someone else, you're more likely to discuss those similar things with that person. That's not the best analogy, but it works really well if it can be done. It's a little tricky to align someone's corporate brand with an event brand and have that seamless. But co-branding, like I said, with tchotchkes, if you have a logo with another logo, sometimes that helps tie things in.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like, I believe that when we worked at a company called HPE, there was something that we did to bring everybody together, which was, I can't, I know that you created it, but we all had the discussion. There was a passport card that we'd created, which incentivized people to go to the different booths that were relevant to something that we, like a sales play or whatever, and get something from the booth that tied back to the learning. That was called like the HP passport. And then they got their thing clipped and then or stamped. And at the end, they all went in for a prize draw. And I think they won an iPad or something weird like that back in the day. But so that's
Yes.
really, so I hear you. I think it is hard to, get one of your sponsors to go, well, what do you mean? I need to do your SCO theme. So you're right. The co-branding is one of the elements. And I think the other thing that I've seen you do before is making sure that the turnkey booths have a certain look and feel that aligns with the imagery and the feel of the sales kickoff throughout the event, if that makes sense. So that is really, really good. I will respond to this last question in a moment, but because I'm going to ask you a different one, if that's okay. The last question was going to be around metrics. How can you validate that value to the sponsors? I'll hit on that before we close off, having done it or whatever. But let me ask you one last thing. From a creative mind, from your point of view, what do you think or believe or know through all of your experience, which is many, many years doing loads and like lots and lots of sales kickoffs? What is it that stands out to you in your memory of some of the best things that have been created in an expo area that that you're remembering? You may have been part of creating it, but what are the three things that you've gone, yeah, I can see this was really busy because of this. I can see that it was busy because of that. What are three things that you think delegates really loved in an expo area, in your time of doing so many of them? Like the whole event.
I think a lot of times it is something that they can interact with, whether it's a VR headset or If someone is, let's just say it's a magician,
Yeah.
that's something that'll get people to your booth. If it's something they could personalize and take away, something that is easier for them to, let's say they're a little bit more of an introvert and they're maybe less likely to go directly to someone and talk face to face. Having that other personalities to be able to interact and put on that VR headset, play with that thing, whatever it is, look at that video, click some buttons, have a demo where that person is actually moving around a mouse or some sort of stylus within that demo. That helps sort of just not just be talk voice to voice and communicating that way. It helps them interact with your booth, and those are the ones that people will remember a little bit more, I think.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that. So before I close off and recap, one of the other ways of proving value is to track some metrics of the impact of the expo. And so some of the things that I've done in the past, which we then would give to the people who are sponsoring is, you know, they can track how many people came to their booth based on any interaction that we gave them, which is you can give out these tickets, you can stamp these cards, or you can, give away your tchotchkes and then count them at the end. There's 3 or 4 different ways of understanding traffic. And I've just given you a couple. The second way to prove the value is how we got them one time. I got them to fill in an electronic form, not scanning a badge. That's pointless. But it's not pointless, but it's not giving them a representation of the value of a conversation with a seller. If you scan the badge, what are they going to do with that? They're not really going to market to a seller. So what we set up was getting them to have a customer conversation and tracking those. So when a sales rep came out, what customers are you working with? How can we be of assistance? And then they would start talking about how they could partner together on a particular account. So that worked out pretty well. But if you want to do how many smiles you got versus, upside down smiles, you can track that as well in a survey format. Okay, Matt,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. This has been very exciting and informative, and I hope our viewers out there are enjoying the content. Of course, please like and subscribe and comment, and we can get back to you. If you're interested in working with anyone on this channel, please reach out to us. The email addresses are in there, and we'll happily talk to you about it based on whatever expertise. But just to recap, an expo, having a paid for sponsor expo in your sales kickoff, yes, it can help you monetize your event, but the value has to be for the delegate and for the sponsors. It's equally yoked. They have to be there with a purpose and not just to give away tchotchkes. So make sure that you understand, the value that the sponsor can bring to your delegates. And number 2, make sure you understand how to prove out that value to the sponsors who are investing that money into your event. And then, of course, the other things that Matt had called out from a design perspective is layout is critical. Make sure you're spacing it out in such a way that there is room for the larger and the smallers to coexist to create a nice dynamic. Have some music, maybe have a speaker, have some libations and food, create activations to create it, to make it, an unforgettable experience for your sellers that are going through it. And I'll just reinforce this for you because I can't tell you how painful it is. Don't get too many sponsors in the space that you have. Avoid that. That would be my one avoidance. All right, that's it. We've enjoyed sharing this with you. We hope that your sales kickoffs and your expos are very successful, and we look forward to presenting some more information to you in the future. Have a fantastic day. Thank you. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you.